All right, everybody, I am back with a brand new DC update. Now, I have to throw some shade at some of the haters out there. I've had a couple of interesting things happen, and I'm going to address these couple of things real quick here. And I know people say to ignore the haters, but there are some times where I just can't resist. And you'll have to excuse me, I've got the hiccups, so I might hiccup a few times during this today, but I can't help it. They haven't stopped yet. But first of all, I actually had somebody come in my comments the other day and say they really hated that I say, hey, everybody, I'm back with a brand new DC update, because they thought it was a little redundant because obviously if I'm doing another video, I'm back. I just had to laugh at that. That's kind of my thing. All right, so that's not going to change. So I'm sorry if that irritates you, but that's just how I start the videos. And it's going to stay that way. I'm sorry if it bothers you. Now, the other thing that happened was interesting. I had to get Instagram involved the other day because somebody who did not agree with my comments on here doesn't agree with the fact that I am anti-gun, that I am pro-DCEU, and I'm not saying Snyder because it's not just about Snyder. And I am going to I am going to follow up with about my last video and talking about getting people into the seats. I have a much better graphic that somebody posted, and we're going to look at that today. But this person actually came on to my professional Instagram account for my business. Not this, but for my voiceover business. And started saying what a terrible person I am and that nobody should want to work with me. Okay, people? That's not okay. That is not okay. Now, luckily, Instagram got involved immediately and probably banned that account. And I think this person probably created that account just to do it. This is not real life. Well, it is, but it's not. This is hobby stuff. These are things that I'm interested in. This is my review channel on movies, TV shows, everything DC, games, Legos, you name it, comic books. That's not real life. I do have a real job as a professional actor. I am a voice actor. It's what I do for a living. This does not encroach on that, okay? If you don't like my views on here, keep it on here, okay? That is totally disrespectful. It is not okay, and it is extremely unprofessional. Keep it to yourself if you don't like what I have to say. This is my review channel, okay? So I wanted to address those few things. Now we're going to look at some photos today. My last video is one of my most watched DC videos where I was talking about Gal Gadot being out. And it looks like she may not be out, and we're going to talk about that. Here's what has happened, and this is something else I wanted to address before I show these pictures. It is a fact that people are running away from James Gunn, that they want nothing to do with what James Gunn is starting. We already have David Zaslav in an investor call saying they have a plan B if Gunn stuff doesn't do well. And I don't think it's going to do well. I don't think there's any chance that it's going to do well. Gunn is not the name that's going to bring people into the theaters. It's just not. That Superman film is the most important film that Warner Brothers has ever done. And we already have people, and I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, we already have people making excuses for that film knowing it's going to tank ahead of time. Okay, we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But we have people running away. Cavill was the first announcing he wasn't coming back. He made that announcement. The studio didn't. I have a feeling that behind the scenes that he saw what they were doing and he said, I don't want anything to do with this. We know Ben Affleck was the same thing. That is definitely the case with Ben Affleck because James Gunn said that they wanted him to wreck. They wanted him to come in and do stuff. And Ben Affleck said, I want nothing to do with Gunn's DCU. He talked about this in an interview. Then we have news coming out that there's a writer who worked for Warner Brothers and worked for a lot of these different films under the DCEU, and they've jumped ship, that they want nothing to do with the DCU. So there are people that don't want anything to do with what is coming up, and there's reason for that. If anything, if The Flash is an indication of what we can expect to come, it is the MCU 2.0 on steroids. And people don't want these generic superhero films. People want something that's unique. There's a reason why the Batman made some money. There's a reason why the Joker made over $1 billion. It's because these were unique films. You can have unique films within the DCEU continuity, but you have to do it right. This generic shovelware, and that's, when you go in games, you hear that word a lot, shovelware. I call these shovel movies. They're shovel films. They're films that they just want to make a quick buck on and move on. They're not special. They're not memorable. That's what we can expect from Warner Brothers going forward, because Warner Brothers is in pretty bad shape, and we're going to take a look at that today. But let's look at some of the news, and I'm going to show you a graphic here in a few minutes that's going to back up everything I talked about in my last video. And I like to look at facts, okay? And it's a fact that more people were going to the movies prior to Justice League, and they started to come back with Black Adam. They did. But then you had Gunn make his announcement. So we're going to look at some photos here. So let's see what I've got. So the first 3 photos that I have here are from the Batgirl movie. And I am now beginning to believe that the Batgirl film was probably canceled because it fit into the DCEU. Like, I can't remember who came out and said that. I think it was Brendan Fraser came out and said that it was part of the DCEU, and that Gunn did not want this, and when they decided to make those decisions, this got tanked. Not tanked, it got canned. And after seeing some of these behind-the-scene photos, I want to see this film. I mean, look at this photo down here. That looks very familiar from Batman '89. This, I actually want to see this. Keaton, it was great to see him back. He did a great job. I want to see more of Keaton. I want a Batman Beyond film with Michael Keaton. But you know what's funny about this is we knew that was rumored to be coming out before Gunn took over. And then today, some people came out and said, I don't know if it was a studio or what, but insiders said that Batman Beyond was planned until The Flash tanked, which is bullcrap. That was announced to have been killed long before The Flash came out. So they're now trying to blame everything on the DCEU, and we knew that this was coming. We told everybody that they were going to blame, the Snyderverse for the failure of all these films. But it has nothing to do with Snyder. It has nothing to do with the Snyderverse. It has to do with the fact that the studios lied time and time again to the people that go see these films, and people are fed up with it. It is a fact. So this is the first photo. We've got 2 more photos that came out of the canceled Batgirl film. We've got this alleyway where Batman is talking with Batgirl, and we can see the Batmobile there. And we have another one here with Leslie Grace behind the scenes, unless that's her makeshift Batcave there, where she's got some stuff set up. But now I kind of want to see this film. I don't think it was as bad as people said it was going to be. So here is the photo where there was a whole interview, and I haven't read the whole interview yet, but during that same interview, and this is how the internet works, people will take quotes and not look at the whole big picture and just take it and make it their own. And everybody picked up on that quote that I shared the other day that Gal Gadot was done. But now she's hinted at returning as Wonder Woman. She said things are being worked on behind the scenes, and once the right moment arrives, you will know about it. So maybe she's not done. And now I'm beginning to think that they did extend something to both Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill, and they probably turned it down. They're still going to have to explain why some people are the same and some are different. It's not going to work if they do not make it cohesive, because they are trying to bounce this all off of the DCEU. But The Flash did not do anything to bridge the DCEU and the DCU. So here's that graphic that I talked about, and I wanted people to look at this. And this is some pretty crazy stuff. This shows you what kind of money these movies actually made in theaters. Now, I'm not looking at the budget. Some movies made more money made a higher percentage in profit because they had a smaller budget. But we're looking strictly at people that paid to go see these movies. First of all, you look at Man of Steel, which made over $600 million after its initial run. And what's crazy about this is if you look at these first 4 films that came out for the DCEU, made more money than the first 5 films, way more than the MCU did in their first four or 5 films. And what's crazy is you had over $600 million on a brand new take on Man of Steel, where people were afraid to see a new person take the mantle. And people were unsure. Okay? So that's where that ended. That's pretty respectable. This is, in today's money, if you did it for inflation, it would have been over $1 billion or close. Not $1 billion, but close to it. I think about 850 to 900 million. That's pretty crazy for the first outing on a brand new character with a new person in charge. Then you have Batman versus Superman, which made over $800 million, about $850 million. And this film, you adjust it for inflation since it came out, and it is over $1 billion. Even though that movie was butchered by the studio, it had a massive drop-off in the second weekend. Had they released the real version of the film, just envision the kind of money that movie would have made. Then you had Suicide Squad, which made close to $800 million, which was very respectable. Now, people have come in and argued that, the Suicide Squad by James Gunn wasn't going to do that well because it was, obscure characters. No, I think the Suicide Squad is pretty well known. This was ramping up the DCU. People were eager to see where this was headed. And you actually had a cameo by Ben Affleck in that film in several different scenes. So that did pretty respectable, even though the studio butchered that film as well. Then you had Wonder Woman, which made over $800 million. Very amazing for the first Wonder Woman live-action film. That movie was very well received. I remember going to see that early. And I got to see it really early, like 3 or 4 weeks early, and it killed me because I couldn't go back. It was a really good movie. And then you had Justice League come out, and people were more in tune than what you think they were, heard about everything that was going on behind the scenes, and you had a smaller turnout than what happened with Man of Steel. Talk about butchering this film. And then Zack Snyder's Justice League finally got released, and everybody agrees, everybody universally agrees it was a much better film. How they released this film in theaters versus what Zack Snyder was doing is a massive head-scratcher. Then you had Aquaman come out. Look at that, almost $1.2 billion. That movie made a crap ton of money. And everybody will come out and tell you that Snyder ruined the DCEU because of Batman versus Superman. What a freaking lie. People still continue to come to the theater all the way through Aquaman, 4 films later. And then you had Shazam. Now, I really enjoyed Shazam, but it was more like a Marvel film than anything else. But Shazam was never on the original slate. So after Aquaman came out, everyone started to realize, oh my gosh, and the general audience, there was big news when they announced the big slate at the San Diego Comic-Con, and they didn't follow through with that. So when Shazam came out of nowhere, people were like, what's this? What's this? And then the Joker came out, which made over $1 billion, which has nothing to do with the DCEU, but it was something different, and people actually enjoyed that movie. Then look what happened. You had another film that was not announced by the studio in the original slate, Birds of Prey, which came out of nowhere. Nobody asked for it. Nobody wanted it. It didn't do well at all. Then you had Wonder Woman 1984, which people hate. I actually enjoyed that movie, but a lot of people hate it. A lot of people hate it. And then you have the Suicide Squad. Look at that. The Savior's film. Good old James Gunn. His film was one of the worst grossing films in the DCEU because people got upset. It erased a lot of the characters that were started in the original Suicide Squad. People will come out and say, well, that's the Suicide Squad. They're supposed to die. But they got rid of some legacy characters. And all they did was want to wipe out what was started with the original Suicide Squad. Ridiculous. Not very well received. Now, people will go and point to the Rotten Tomatoes score that audiences loved it and that critics loved it? They may have. But a good indicator on how well a film does is how many people illegally download it and what it does on home video sales. And all around, The Suicide Squad was a bomb. Everywhere from the theater to the illegal downloads to also the home video sales. It was a bomb. It was the worst thing that had happened to the DCEU. Now, people will say it was because of the pandemic. Doesn't matter. There were other films that came out during the pandemic that people were willing to go see, like Godzilla and a few of the others. Even though it was on HBO Max, people still went to the theaters and they made quite a bit of money. People were not interested in the Suicide Squad. Then you had the Batman come out. And again, it was something new. But come on, it's the Batman, and it didn't make over $1 billion. According to everybody online who hates on Zack Snyder, it didn't make $1 billion. It was a failure. Then you had Black Adam. So I want you to notice a trend here with the DCEU films. You have Shazam, Birds of Prey, Wonder Woman, and Suicide Squad. Each of these films made less and less money until Black Adam came out. They announced that Henry Cavill was back, that he had a cameo, that he was in the film, and people got interested again. They actually went to the movies, and this was the only film that did not get a China release, which could have easily added on $300 million more dollars to its release. If you look at the international gross, a lot of this has to do with China on all these films. And look at how small the international gross is on Black Adam. It never got a China release. Had it gotten a China release, it could have easily surpassed what the Batman did. But no. Then about a month later, they announced everything is changing. James Gunn comes out and announces a reboot. There's an announcement by Henry Cavill that he's not coming back as Superman. And the next few movies tank. Why is that? It's not that people got disinterested with the DCEU. It's the fact that the studio turned their back on the people that were going to the movies. They basically gave them the middle finger. The middle finger. James Gunn is not the savior in this. He's not going to be the savior. All of you guys who believe that he's the guy that's going to right this ship, I believe you are delusional. The numbers do not lie. People want to see the end of this story. They want to see the Ben Affleck film. They want to see Ray Fisher come back as Cyborg and get his own movie. People want to see Zack Snyder's Justice League 2 and 3. People want to see Wonder Woman 3. People are not interested in a reboot. Nobody at this stage really wants a reboot except a few of the Gunn followers. And they're very loud on social media. But they will come out and just say, give the guy a chance. He's amazing. James Gunn has never done anything amazing in his career. He's a competent filmmaker. I really enjoy Slither a lot, which strangely was his first directorial film. He directed that film. I really enjoyed that. But nothing is epic. Nothing is amazing. They're just enjoyable films. That movie, that Superman movie, has to be the best movie on the planet. But you know what's happening is you have John Campea online already making excuses, saying he doesn't expect the new Superman Legacy movie to make money, and it doesn't have to make money. It can even lose money, but it's important. It's good for the studio. It's good for everybody. What kind of backwards logic is that? If you announced a Man of Steel 2 today, it's going to be an instant hit. What Pam Abdi and Mike DeLuca had plans for was the right path. We are on the wrong path. Those comments by John Campea are completely asinine. That's not how business works, but I guarantee you that the studio is going to make excuses for it, and no matter what happens or how little or how much money that movie makes, they're going to call it a success, and it's great to see a success after everything that happened with the DCEU. I guarantee you that's what the studio is going to do. It's just nothing other than lies and more lies, and they're pointing the middle finger at all of the people that got them to where they are. It's pretty sad. In other news, we have Warner Brothers Discovery is reportedly in talks to license some HBO shows, including Insecure, to Netflix. HBO veterans reportedly pushed back against the plan, but corporate financial consideration won out. So what is happening here? It's no secret, Warner Brothers Discovery is bleeding money. They are bleeding money. They cannot survive. They need to sell off some of these properties, these licensing properties, so they can make money. They could absolutely sell some of these IPs to some of these other streaming services to make more money, which ultimately makes Max pointless. Because, I mean, the whole reason you subscribe to one of these streaming networks is so that you can get all of the content you're looking for. And HBO won't even have some of its own content because it has no money and has to license them out to other streaming platforms. How pathetic is that? I will tell you that David Zaslav is the worst thing that's happened to Warner Brothers in my lifetime. All right, guys. So as you can see, Warner Brothers Discovery is in complete disarray right now. David Zaslav can talk a good game. We've seen it in some of his investor calls. He did it to everybody prior to taking over. He was acting like he was going to be the savior. And as soon as Black Adam came out and they announced that Henry Cavill, and yes, Warner Brothers had him make this announcement, make no mistake about it, it's still out there, especially on DC's page, that he was coming back and there was more to come. They were telling him to do this in order to sell tickets to Black Adam, even though they had another plan that they were going with. They knew this. And they decided to do it anyway. So there's some crazy stuff happening right now. And it's not good. And I don't know when things are going to get good. Now, I'm telling everybody right now, I will always be objective with my movie reviews. I am going to give you my honest opinion on them. And anytime I see a movie, I can take out the studio that was behind it and I can take out the director and actually criticize or critique a film with no preconceived notions. I did it with The Flash. I've done it with every movie prior to this. I go in wanting to enjoy the films, and I will give my honest opinion on it. That's never going to change. I cannot be swayed because of my dislike for an individual at a studio or not. Because I gave a pretty high score to Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and Guardians of the Galaxy is one of my favorite MCU films. But I've already seen the stuff that he produces for DC. I did see his Suicide Squad film, and I do not like it. I have seen Peacemaker. It's juvenile, adolescent humor. It is not stuff I want to see in DC. And I don't think he's going to respect these characters the way he says he will. I would like to be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I will admit it if I'm wrong when Superman Legacy comes out, if it comes out. But I think the best thing the studio can do at this stage, the best thing, is to get rid of Gunn, get rid of Safran, bring Nolan back into the fold, bring back Deborah Snyder, and also Pam Abdi and Mike DeLuca, and let them chart what they had planned. And in the meantime, you sit back and make definitive plans on a good reboot after the other storylines have been finished. This is the only way you're going to appease the fans. The studio is at fault for the division that there is amongst DC fans. You have so many people coming out telling you that Zack Snyder got these characters wrong. And there are certain aspects he definitely did not get right. But there was a character arc that he was going for, and these characters were going to get back to the characters we all know and loved. But he never had the chance to do that. And people still bash on him even though he's been gone for 6 years. The DCEU is not Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder only directed 2 films. A third that never saw the light of day, never made it into theaters. So you cannot put the blame on him. You cannot put the blame on Snyder fans. The blame is on the studios. All right, there is my update for the day. I do appreciate it. We will see you on the next video.